Q&A Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @Q&A Review, that is @CuenDrevieu. You can also contact us directly by emailing information at cuenreview.com, that is INFORMATION@CuenReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976, that's 0141 772 3976.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 26th of July 2023 from the Voices section. Closure of Chardon D'Or, a worrying sign of the times. This article is by Alison Rowett. Each day on the letters pages, the Herald runs 2 photographs from our archives. It is a popular feature, not least because the pictures, many featuring Glasgow, are uniformly belters. One would expect nothing less from the city that gave the world Oscar Marsaroli. Lately, however, I have found myself troubled by some of the shots. Odd, because the scenes featured are usually so joyful. Take a recent one, dated 1987. Photographed by John Young, it features a busker by the name of the Incredible Hulk Wham Bam Boogie Man, doing his stuff on what looks like Argyle Street. Watching him are 4 young women who have chosen to express their appreciation of his efforts by laughing uproariously. It is the Glasgow way. The most amazing thing about the photo is what can be seen in the background. People, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of them, and almost as many buses. To use a non-technical term, the place is hoaching. Walk along those same city centre streets today and the picture is woefully different. The place is close to empty, the people gone, vanished. While it is hardly the opening scenes from the movie of I Am Legend, set in a post-apocalyptic New York City, it looks wrong. It feels wrong. It is wrong. Our poor, dear, once beautiful city is in a bad way, and it is going to get worse if something is not done. That was the warning from Michael Bergson, owner of the Bucks bar chain. He spoke out after the closure at the weekend of Bryan Mall at Le Chardon D'Or on West Regent Street after 22 years in business. The restaurant was in with the bricks of Glasgow, as much a part of the city scene as the traffic cone on Wellington's Head. The announcement, made on social media, cited COVID, the cost of living crisis, working from home, plunging property values and lack of support for the hospitality sector among the reasons for shutting down. It was not the only restaurant suffering. Places that would usually have been full midweek have only a fraction of the custom they previously enjoyed. There was widespread shock at the news of Mall's closure, and in Mr. Bergson's case, this came with a side order of anger directed at Humza Yousaf, the First Minister. Describing Mr. Mall as one of my best friends and the hardest working, most talented person I know, the businessman said the city was in a state of filth and dilapidation. Asking what the First Minister could do to reverse this carnage, Mr. Bergson provided a list of suggestions including rates relief, subsidies for public transport, and help for small businesses to get started. But no, he concluded, referring to an event attended by the First Minister in Dundee on the same weekend malls closed. He added, he was on a skateboard launching the Summer of Independence. It says it all. Glasgow is not alone in struggling post-COVID. The difficulties it is facing will be familiar to cities around the world. but while other places are back in the swim, Glasgow seems to be sinking further into the mire. It is doing so for all the reasons outlined above, but in Glasgow's case some extra burdens have been added, just for us. One might almost think a task force had been convened to find ways of making the place even more of a ghost town. Still have a few pesky motorists determined to come into the city rather than go to the malls, impose a low-emission zone and watch the fines roll in. Not enough revellers and workers using the night buses? Scrap them. The service, not the workers, though the outcome will be the same. It is the opposite of a regeneration strategy, and you have to wonder why it is allowed to hold sway. After all, it is hardly in the interests of the City Council and Scottish Government, both SNP-led, for Glasgow to go under. The city should be an advertisement for the best of Scotland has to offer, not a cautionary tale for urban planners. If Glasgow is not being done down by accident or design, is the problem sheer neglect? Local and national government too busy making other plans? They would disagree. According to the council leader, Susan Aitken, better days are on the way. Writing in our sister paper, the Glasgow Times, Miss Aitken said the Glasgow city region had been chosen by the Scottish and UK governments as an investment zone. This means that we will receive £80 million over 5 years to help build on our economic potential, to stimulate business growth, and to create more good-quality, well-paid jobs. The £80 million cannot arrive a minute too soon. If and when it does, it will be too late for many. Nor will it solve the city's fundamental problems, chief among them the flight of taxpayers to the suburbs. As for the chronic poverty and ill health built up over generations, where do you even begin? It is easy to look at Glasgow and feel its problems are overwhelming. So much to do and so little money. Yet this is a city with so much more to give. We have seen it go through bad times before and bounce back. But there has to be a collective willingness to pull the same way and a balanced approach to recovery. To spend money, Glasgow needs to make money, and that means making it a place people want to live and work. To adapt a phrase, if we don't build it, they, the office workers, the shoppers, the tourists, the diners, the clubbers, won't come. The closure of one restaurant, much loved as it was, might not seem to amount to much in the greater sweep of things, but it does. Like any city, Glasgow is an ecosystem. It needs careful monitoring to see what's going right and wrong. The litter and the empty shops should have been enough on their own to ring alarm bells, but apparently not. If nothing is done, Glasgow will slide further into decline. And then what? The failure of a city the size of Glasgow is not an option, whatever part of the political spectrum you stand on. Glasgow's recovery should be treated as what it is, a national emergency. And that means everyone doing their bit, starting with government at all levels. It won't be possible to achieve everything, but actively avoiding doing any further harm, starting with maintaining a night bus service, would be a good beginning. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 26th of July 2023 from the Voices section. The Barbie movie doesn't need to spur feminist angst. It's fun. This article is by Katrina Stewart. The algorithms have decided I should be pelted with Barbie promotional trailers, pink, pink everywhere, and not a drop of respite. My email inbox is heaving with Barbie-themed press releases, the Barbie pay gap, Barbie pink sparkling home makeovers, a Barbie hairbrush that demonstrates hair can unlock imagination. Can it? How? I am entirely hyped out. This overwhelming Barbie marketing is almost enough to put you off the movie. Almost, but not quite. There are pros and cons, certainly to the much-awaited Barbenheimer movie weekend. Even if you've been under a rock, you can't possibly have failed to have seen the interviews, adverts and trailers for both Barbie and Oppenheimer, which were released simultaneously on Friday. As a dedicated cinema goer, I have experienced the theatres immediately post-lockdown and in the deeply troubled time since. While obvious terrible for the industry, it was quite nice on an extremely selfish level to have quieter screenings without selfish dolts ruining everything with their endless phone scrolling and their brain-dead nattering. But personal peeves aside, how delightful it was to go to the cinema over the weekend and be unable to move without ricocheting into other people. Pros: it was crowded, chaotic, and finally felt like a proper night out again. Cons: so many folk on their phones. In one screening, a parent occupied her bored child by giving her an iPad to watch cartoons on, with no headphones. If there's one thing that saps the joy from a movie, it's trying to focus on the dialogue while being distracted by Bluey. But if there's another thing that saps the joy from a movie, it's the endless analysis pieces before the piece has even been aired. Can Barbie be a feminist icon? Is Barbie responsible for eating disorders? Is Barbie nothing but a commercial boon for Mattel? What does it all mean? Did we ask already if Barbie is a feminist icon? It's a tough one, sure. Barbie with her perky boobs, impossible waist and ingratiating smile. There's no way she can be an appropriate role model for young girls. That question ripples through the centre of Greta Gerwig's movie. Can an aspirational image of hyper-perfect femininity ever be an innocent focus for girlhood play? Or will Barbie always only represent toxic gender norms? It is rippled through Barbie's history too, as Mattel has tried to make the doll more culturally relevant and diverse, and, more importantly, boost sales. When a girl plays with Barbie, she imagines everything she can become, a 2015 Mattel ad claimed. Tall, busty, blonde, or an astronaut, US president, or doctor. Arguably, the film is already a feminist success. In its opening weekend, the movie made $377 million, the biggest ever debut for a film directed by a woman. If I was going to fret about anything in the movie, it would be the fact that Alan, a now discontinued doll introduced to be Ken's buddy, as the only man in the movie who doesn't conform to stereotypical masculinity, teams up with the women. The film examines how the patriarchy also harms men, but it glosses over the fact that poor old Alan sides with the Barbies because there is no space for him to be authentic with the Kens. As in the movie, as in life, there is no chiding of men who aren't inclusive and diverse. The women will do it. There are some glorious arguments on social media about Barbie. Besides men worried that the film means Hollywood wants them to be gay or that the feminist agenda will kill us all, the disputes boil down to a fight over the questions of can something so glossy also be weighty? Can something pink also deal with important themes? Can we, is my question, just watch the movie and have a nice time without fretting about what it all means? If Barbie the doll is an icon of anything, it is the culture wars. Hats off to those who enjoy the intellectual scrapping over analysis of what the doll and the movie represent. There's no shame, though, in just enjoying the experience.
Herald Scotland recorded on Wednesday 26th of July 2023. Arts and Entertainments. Alan Cumming to bring one-man show to Glasgow next year, by Gabriel Mackay, journalist. Celebrated Scots actor Alan Cumming will bring a new one-man show to Glasgow's Armadillo next year as he wrestles with the question of ageing. The 58-year-old has starred in The Good Wife, the James Bond film GoldenEye, and recently the documentary My Old School. On January 20, 2024, he will bring his show Alan Cumming is Not Acting His Age to Glasgow. Songs from cabaret authors Candor and Ebb blend with contemporary favourites and even a self-penned paean against plastic surgery. Fans can also expect the actor to touch on the effects of gravity, the time the mum from the Brady Bunch punched him, and what his dog taught him about the quality of life. Mr. Cummings said, "I'm constantly told, even now in my 6th decade, that I am childlike or puckish, and yet at the same time I'm also called a silver fox and a daddy. I think we all get really mixed messages about ageing. We're told to worship at the fountain of youth, to do everything we can to our bodies and our minds to stay young, yet then we bandy around pejoratives like grow up or act your age, even that we're mutton dressed as lamb. I feel I'm still at an age where I can dance till dawn, but also be able to dole out some wisdom to my fellow revellers. Wisdom is just being able to recognise the repeating patterns that emerge as you get older, and maybe deciding to react to them differently. It's just the same show with different costumes." By Gabriel Mackay. Herald Scotland recorded on Friday 28th of July 2023. Arts and Entertainments. Author Claire Daverley on her love for Loch Long in Argyll. By Susan Swarbrick, columnist and senior features writer. Where is it? The shores of Loch Long near Dunoon, more specifically a pebble beach that is often deserted and strewn with seaweed, driftwood and barnacled rocks. To the left the Arachar Alps rise into the sky, and a pine forest cloaks the green hills that roll across the water. It's quiet and still, and sometimes the water is broken by the harbour porpoise rising to the surface. Why do you go there? I always dreamt of living by the coast, and becoming a full-time writer rather magically has allowed that to happen. In between the hours at my desk, I like to wander down to the shore to watch the water, breathe in the salt, and soak in those views. More often than not, I'll go for a swim, or do a few laps in my paddleboard. How often do you go? Every day, preferably early in the morning when the sky is stained with dawn, and before anyone else is awake. Although this is the best time to write too, so it's always a tussle of priorities. How did you discover it? I live close by. My dog, as much as she enjoys sleeping under my desk while I type, needs walking twice a day. To keep things varied, I'm always finding little bays and hidden stairs that lead us to different parts of the loch. This particular beach is not far from the house, with slippery, broken steps down to the shore, and a lot of jagged rocks near to the seawall. There are no trees, no benches, no sand, just a mass of stones and the ebb and flow of the water. What's your favourite memory? The day we moved in was gloriously sunny, with unblemished blue skies and the sunlight sparkling across the loch. For years the view out of my window had been pylons and train tracks, so I couldn't resist. I unloaded a few boxes, threw on my swimsuit and headed to the water. I remember splashing into the shallows and marvelling at how this was now the place I could call home. Who do you take? I usually go alone, but I will often take my husband and our spaniel. What do you take? A notebook, because I'll never be without one. My robe, which I'll throw on after my swim. My wet shoes, so that I can wade in without worrying about what's underfoot. And often my camera too. The water is so surprisingly clear and the sky so ever-changing that the novelty of photographing it still hasn't worn off. What do you leave behind? Only footprints, of course. Maybe a few ripples in the water. Sum it up in 5 words. Silent, calming, solitary, briny, still. What other travel spot is on your wish list? I want to return to Harris, but next up is Islay, and I'm keen to get to Shetland one day. Talking at Night, the debut novel by Claire Daverley, Penguin Michael Joseph, £14.99, is out now. By Susan Swarbrick. Herald Scotland recorded on Friday 28th of July 2023. Arts and Entertainments. Book review, A Compelling Dose of Folk Horror by Alistair Mabbitt. Consumed, Greg Buchanan, Orion, £16.99. 16 Horses, the debut thriller by Borders author Greg Buchanan, made such a stir that it's now being adapted for TV, and one of its leading characters, Cooper Allen, has been carried over into this follow-up. Seemingly intent on outdoing its predecessor's murky tone, Consumed often feels less like a detective story than folk horror, or the chronicle of a descent into madness. At all times it's ominous, paranoid and unsettling. It begins with the death of elderly photographer Sophie Bertilac, who collapses in her garden in the rural town of Lethwick and is eaten by her pet pigs. Her death appears to be a ghastly accident, though inside the house investigators find that photos have been removed from their frames. But the story has another beginning, back in 1964 when Sophie is given a camera for her 17th birthday and spends an afternoon taking pictures in woods near her home. A man and a girl at the edge of a lake get her attention and she snaps them without their knowledge. The chemist developing the photos recognises the girl as Stephanie Earlsham, who has been missing for 3 years and after this sighting is never seen again. Another photo taken that day of a plastic pipe jutting out of the ground has even more horrific implications. Sophie goes on to have a long career but is forever defined by these 2 early photos. With her death, Cooper Allen enters the story, and it is apparent that she's not in the best of mental health. A forensic vet who works with the police in cases involving dead animals, she doesn't get on with her family, and her mother has arranged a weekend at a hotel in Ledwick for them to try to smooth things over. The fact that Cooper gets called away to perform a post-mortem on 2 pigs and to recover as much of Sophie Bertilac from their stomachs as possible doesn't go down well, and her growing obsession with the photographer's death ensures the visit goes from bad to worse. Cooper may only be the periphery of the investigation, but she chases answers as though she was a detective assigned to the case, pushing her way into the lives of Sophie's son and daughter Matthew and Lucy, and even indulging in a spot of housebreaking. Cooper's difficulties in connecting with people, her preoccupation with true crime podcasts, her admission to having once killed someone in self-defence, and above all the feverish, paranoid state she's worked herself into, all allow Buchanan to sow doubts in our minds about her judgment and her belief that she and Stephanie Earlsham are somehow linked. However, there's also the very real and very frightening figure of Detective Sergeant Lapis, a copper who ticks every incel box and appears to be stalking Cooper and enjoying living rent-free in her head. Her encounters with Lapis are terrifying, but, like much of this novel, strange and faintly dreamlike. Everything leads back to that afternoon in 1964, fragmented flashbacks revealing more about Sophie, her family, and the kidnapped girl. And it's all evoked in the most disturbing way, Buchanan threading throughout the text feral imagery of animals eating humans and setting the present-day sections in a Ledwick suffering rainfall of biblical proportions. Its uniquely ominous atmosphere, drawing freely from horror and summing up a sense of weirdness that often verges on the hallucinatory, gives Consumed a compelling quality that stands out in a crowded genre. Stylish and unsettling, Buchanan is forging a path through crime fiction that's all his own, and it feels like he's only just begun. By Alistair Mabbitt. Herald Scotland, recorded on Thursday 27th of July 2023. Arts and Entertainments. Jagger at 80, the night Stones fans rampaged in Lanarkshire. By Russell Ledbetter. It was May 1964 and promoter Ron Kirkwood's patience had suddenly snapped. Mr. Kirkwood had for years been organising jazz dances in Hamilton, Lanarkshire, and had decided to venture into beat groups, with plans to bring Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Searchers and Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas to the Lanarkshire town. Now, however, he had had enough. Beat groups were no longer to his taste. What changed his mind was a trouble-torn gig at the town's Chanting Hall Hotel on May 19 by Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. The Stones were big and getting bigger. They had already had several chart hits. The Chuck Berry penned Come On, the Lennon-McCartney composition I Wanna Be Your Man, Not Fade Away, and It's All Over Now would shortly give them their first number 1. They kept up an exhausting pace in 1964, no fewer than 206 concerts, made up of 4 British tours and their first 2 tours of the States, to say nothing of numerous appearances on radio and TV. But they were already one of the most exciting bands in pop, with Jagger, 80 years old today, the most charismatic lead singer of them all. That January they had played the Barrowland in Glasgow, which involved them flying to a gig for the very first time. Everyone wanted to see them. 3,000 fans tried to mob the group at the Hamilton Hotel, and wire netting had to be erected to keep the fans from the musicians. According to news reports, 1,000 extra teenage fans crammed into the hotel's dance hall, and more than 100 young people collapsed in the blast-furnace heat of the venue. Reported Evening Times, ambulancemen worked non-stop for 5 hours in a makeshift casualty station in the foyer. Ambulances ran a shuttle service to Hairmyres Hospital. Buses were stoned. Police had to clear 400 angry teenagers, demanding their money back. Half-naked girls who had collapsed in the heat of the hall had to be dragged into the foyer. Windows in the hotel were smashed and seat cushions slashed with razor blades. As hotel staff dealt with the aftermath, Mr. Kirkwood said, "After last night's trouble, I doubt very much if the police will allow any further beat dances to be held, but regardless of that, I have no intention of staging any more shows of that nature. By the time I refund money to those who did not get into the dance, I'll be lucky if I break even financially. Last night's scenes were the worst I've experienced in the years I've been promoting shows. This was my first and last beat dance. From now on I will stick to organising jazz dances, which I've been doing for years. The hotel proprietor, Isaac Smith, said mod girls in long dresses were jumping up and down in the satin-covered seats in the hall. Memoirs of the Stones' Hamilton concert have filtered down the years. Writing on Twitter 3 years ago, Julian Bray, a journalist and broadcaster, recalled, "I was there, hotel now gone, loads of forged tickets, Stones behind chain-link floor-to-ceiling barricade in corner of ballroom, and dozen bouncers also behind barricade." Speaking to the Hamilton Advertiser in 2014, Stones fan Mick Prater recalled that he was one of the 1,000 people stuck outside. "I didn't get a ticket, I was playing football with the Cubs, but I went along and stood outside. I saw the car with them going in and Mick Jagger was wearing a striped t-shirt. I've never forgotten it. I was only 10 and my mum asked me where I'd been when I got back. I was right up against the door, it was blasting out. From the moment I heard them, it changed my life forever. It's like chemistry." He added, "I think they'd booked them when they were still a pub band, but by the time the gig came round, they had a couple of #1 songs. One of the bouncers later told me he was speaking to Brian Jones, and when he dropped his cigarette out, all the girls jumped in it. A lot of lassies fainted. Mick Jagger still talks about it and says it's one of the gigs he remembers." Interviewed by the Daily Record in 2002, Bill Wyman, the Stones' bass guitarist until his departure in 1993, said, "We had an amazing gig in Hamilton. We were behind 10-foot fencing and kids were climbing it and cutting their fingers. It was about 130 degrees inside and we were playing with our shirts off. We were drenched in sweat. To us it was just another booking and we didn't even know where Hamilton was. It was supposed to be 2,000 people and there were twice that many packed inside because the promoters had printed up extra tickets. About 4,000 came and it was mayhem. Once we got inside we were stuck there. People got hurt because of the crush. Kids were pressing up against the fencing. The fence was chicken wire, but it had been cut off rough at the top. Kids would climb it and cut their hands. Girls were getting their clothes torn. It was insane, but it was incredible that night." Such reaction from fans became a nightly occurrence for the Stones during their frantic tours of 1964 and 1965. Keith Richards, speaking to drummer Charlie Watts' biographer Paul Sexton, recalled that the fans' screaming drowned out the music to such a degree that the band would amuse themselves by playing Popeye the Sailor Man. In times the Stones became huge. They played a number of concerts in Glasgow and Edinburgh. The Apollo in Glasgow welcomed them in March 1971, brackets, when the venue was known as Green's Playhouse, close brackets, and again for 2 nights in September 1973, for 3 nights in May 1976, and finally in May 1982. The Stones went on to play the SECC, as well as several stadium gigs at Hampden and Murrayfield. When they played the National Rugby Stadium 2018, it was sadly their final Scottish concert with Charlie Watts in the drum stool. Speaking to music writer Billy Sloan in 1999, Jagger said, "We've always enjoyed playing in Scotland. You always have to be good up there, but if you don't deliver on stage, you're in trouble. I remember in the 60s we played the Barrowland Ballroom. It was crazy. The heat from the audience was incredible. There was steam coming out of the windows and it looked like the place was on fire. The Glasgow Apollo was fantastic too. The stage was very high, but it was a real favourite of ours. The Apollo audience was always very enthusiastic, but only if you were good, not if you were crap." By Russell Ledbetter. Herald Scotland recorded on Wednesday 26th of July 2023. Arts and Entertainments. Paolo Nutini announces Edinburgh show, How to Get Tickets, by Gabriel Mackay, journalist. Paolo Nutini has announced his only Scottish show of the year, with the singer to play in Edinburgh at the end of August. The Paisley-born star released new album Last Night in the Bittersweet last year, headlining Transmit Festival in Glasgow in the back of it. He would later play dates in Edinburgh and Aberdeen before embarking on a global tour, but had not announced any Scottish dates for 2023. On Wednesday, Mr Nutini announced on social media, though, that he will headline at the Royal Highland Showgrounds in Edinburgh on August 31. Support will be provided by the Big Moon and Inhaler, with tickets on sale on Friday, July 28. Pre-sale begins at 9 a.m. on Ticketmaster with the general sale at 10 a.m. By Gabriel Mackay.
This is from the Herald on Thursday the 27th of July 2023, from the news section. Activists say UK to lose £750 million in tax if Rosebank oil field approved. This article is written by David Ball. The UK government is set to lose more than £750 million in tax revenue if the controversial Rosebank oil field goes ahead, according to new analysis by climate campaigners. The claim comes on the same day that Rosebank's developer, Equinor, posted global profits of more than £15 billion for the first 6 months of the year. Environmental campaigners have accused the UK government of selling the country short over huge subsidies to new North Sea fossil fuels developments that will not help lower bills or boost energy security. The group has pointed to the majority of Rosebank's oil reserves being exported and not used for domestic consumption. Rishi Sunak has been put under pressure by MPs to re-pledge his commitment to net zero and change course in pursuing the expansion of new fossil fuel developments in the North Sea. A decision on whether Rosebank will be approved has reportedly been delayed due to concerns over the proposals meeting climate targets. According to analysis by the Uplift Group, the potential loss to the Exchequer comes from the gap between the generous tax breaks being handed to Rosebank's developers to kickstart the project and the predicted tax payments from the profits of selling Rosebank's oil reserves. An investment allowance for new oil and gas developments, introduced by the Prime Minister last year, will see Rosebank's developers, including Norwegian state-backed oil firm Equinor, receive total tax relief of £3.75 billion to develop Rosebank. But, according to the analysis, most of the field's oil will be produced and taxed after the current 75% windfall tax period has elapsed, at the previous state of 40%. Equinor has described the tax breaks as helpful, while the Institute for Fiscal Studies branded it a huge tax subsidy. While the UK government share of Rosebank will be negative, calculations by Rystad Energy also appear to show that the proposals have a negative net present value for the UK government of minus 116%. According to the study, the UK Treasury stands to lose more than the current estimate of £755 million if oil prices fall in the longer term. While the development would remain profitable for investors, according to additional analysis by WWF Norway. Tessa Khan, Executive Director of Uplift, said, "The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has just said he wants energy firms to use their bumper profits to help ordinary people cope with the cost of living. He should start by telling Equinor to stop Rosebank and instead put far more of its billions into building cheaper, clean, renewable energy. This is what the public want, not more oil for export." She added, "Instead, this government seems determined to sell Britain short while boosting the profits of obscenely wealthy foreign oil companies. Approving Rosebank will actually make Norway's citizens richer, as Equinor, which made £62 billion last year, is majority owned by the Norwegian government. To knowingly greenlight a project that delivers a loss to the Treasury seems incompetent. To do so while watching the climate crisis worsen, thanks to the continued burning of fossil fuels, is even more baffling. When we know that Rosebank's oil won't lower energy bills for consumer one bit, at a time when millions in this country are living in fuel poverty, you've got to ask, who is this government batting for? The UK government has been contacted for comment. That article was written by David Ball. This is from the Herald on Thursday the 27th of July 2023, from the news section. Humza Yousaf says he is not bothered about SNP leadership challenge. This article is written by Tom Gordon. Humza Yousaf has brutally dismissed the prospect of a challenge to his leadership of the SNP, saying he is just not bothered about it. The First Minister said, "There's plenty of things I've got to concern myself about as First Minister. This is not one of them." Chris Hanlon, Secretary of the West Fife and Coastal Villages SNP branch, is seeking nominations to stand against Mr Yousaf at the party's annual conference in October. He suggested the leadership spent too much time pontificating and not enough pursuing independence and implementing party policy. The job of party leader is to implement party policy, all of party policy and nothing but party policy, he said earlier this week, while adding he had yet to decide whether to run or not. He requires 100 nominations from 20 branches to be able to mount a challenge. Mr Yousaf, who narrowly became SNP leader in March after a bruising contest following the resignation of Nicola Sturgeon, was asked about the subject this morning. Visiting the Heavy Sound Community Project for Vulnerable Young People in Cockenzie, East Lothian, Mr Yousaf was asked for his response to the potential leadership challenge. He said, "I'm not bothered about it." Asked if he would welcome a challenge, he said, "I don't think anybody in the SNP would want to go through another leadership contest. There's plenty of things I've got to concern myself about as First Minister. This is not one of them." Mr Yousaf defeated Kate Forbes for the party leadership by 52% to 48% on the final vote count after Ash Regan was eliminated in third place. An SNP source said every member has a right to put themselves forward for party positions, no matter the odds. That article was written by Tom Gordon. This is from the Herald on Thursday the 27th of July 2023, from the news section. Humza Yousaf suggests gas boiler energy overhaul could be scaled back. This article is written by David Boll. Humza Yousaf has suggested he could weaken his government's plans to penalise those with fossil fuel boilers under an overhaul of energy efficiency standards, pointing to the cost of living crisis. The Herald on Sunday revealed that the Scottish Government's Zero Carbon Buildings Minister, Patrick Harvey, is set to shake up EPC ratings before requiring homeowners to meet certain standards at trigger points, such as the sale of a building from 2025. As well as the cost of heating a building, the type of heating system and the fabric of the building could be taken into account, meaning those with gas boilers could see ratings downgraded compared to green methods of warming up homes. But the First Minister has now suggested that the proposals could be watered down, saying, "We will see how far we get in bringing forward the plans." Asked about the proposals by journalists on a visit to East Lothian, the First Minister pointed to the importance of reaching net zero and averting climate breakdown. He said, "So, first and foremost, you're asking me about efforts to help us tackle a climate emergency in a week where we've seen temperatures soaring to record levels across Europe, where we've seen wildfires, meaning that people have to be evacuated from their homes, and indeed tourists from the hotels that they're staying in. So, the climate emergency is not something that's going to happen in the future. It's something that is happening right now, for which we have to take action." Asked about the proposed reform of energy efficiency standards, Mr Yousaf said that energy performance certificates clearly need to demonstrate and show better information on them that is more meaningful to individuals, the consumer as well. He added, "So there are changes that have to be made to EPC. Let's see how far we get in that regard. But any action we take, whether it's the EPCs, whether it's a heat and building strategy, which we absolutely have to make, are going to be important, vital to do, for the sustainability of our planet. But ultimately we'll try to do that in a way that doesn't overwhelm people in the terms of their own costs, because people are suffering as a result of the cost of living crisis." The First Minister insisted that the targets to transform heating systems to cleaner methods are important for us because the climate emergency is happening right now. He added, "We'll make sure we go as far as we possibly can. But also let's be cognizant of the costs that people are and have been facing at the moment as part of the cost of living crisis. We'll do that in a way, take bold action, take radical action, whether it's on EPCs or other measures to tackle a climate emergency, and give people the information they need to make, the choices that they have to make, but do that in a way that's cognizant of the pressures that they're under. The consultation document on the Scottish Government's proposals stresses that gas boilers being penalised under the new standards will help people to switch to greener systems such as heat pumps. Research by EDF, surveying 2,000 UK homeowners, found that 45% of Scots are likely to install a heat pump within the next 5 years. The Scottish Government has aimed to transform 1 million homes to low-carbon heating systems under its strategy. According to the study, just under half of people across the UK said the initial cost of installing a heat pump is their main deterrent. The research also highlights a fifth of people across the UK think heat pumps are ineffective during winter. This is despite air source heat pumps operating effectively in sub-zero temperatures and being 300% more efficient than gas boilers. Philippe Comarat, Managing Director for Customers at EDF, said, "We're on a mission to help everyone save cash and carbon, so it's great to see more people considering heat pumps and a move away from inefficient fossil fuel heating. However, we recognise many barriers remain. While people remain worried about the climate crisis, people are struggling to find the headspace, time and money to make it a priority. We want all our offers to be good for the planet and the pocket, so are taking action to make choosing a quality heat pump install easy and more affordable." That article was written by David Ball.
From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 28th of July 2023, from the news section, Beef munition workers strike backed by Ukrainian MP, by Craig Payton. A Ukrainian MP has backed workers at a Scottish munitions depot who are set to strike next month. Staff at the Defence Equipment and Support (DES) site in Beath, North Ayrshire, will walk out between August the 4th and 7th after 93% of them backed strike action. According to the GMB union, staff are split into two categories, craft and non-craft workers, with the former tasked with assembling weapons and the latter transporting them within the site and loading shipments. Retention bonuses, the union claims, are paid to managers and craft staff, but non-craft workers, who earn less than £21,000 per year, do not receive the payments, meaning the pay gap between the two classifications has tripled to £18,000. Strikes, like the two-day walkout earlier this month, will impact on the supply of Storm Shadow and Brimstone missiles to Ukraine in its fight against the Russian invasion, but a high-profile MP from the country has backed the workers at the depot. Lesia Vasilenko, who decided to train in the use of guns to defend Ukraine and made a number of appearances in the UK to drum up support, said, "The work being done by GMB Scotland members at Beath could not be more important to Ukraine as we fight for our freedom. I thank every one of them for their efforts, support their fight for fairness, and urge managers to quickly negotiate an end to this dispute and ensure the crucial work continues." Her intervention comes after Ukrainian trade unions sent their support to the workers at the depot earlier this week. GMB Scotland organiser Chris Kennedy said, "It is regrettable that MPs and trade unions in Ukraine have a far better understanding and greater appreciation of the importance of our workers' role than their managers. Their support is greatly appreciated, and we would urge the Ministry of Defence to properly understand the implications of this dispute and negotiate to end what has become a two-tier system. This is the first strike at DES, and management should listen to the voices being raised in support of our members, from Scotland to Ukraine, and negotiate a settlement that treats workers with fairness and respect." A Ministry of Defence spokesperson said, "The strikes will have no effect on our ability to provide capability to Ukraine." Pre-planned contingency measures are being implemented at DM Beath to ensure the continued operation of the site. We remain open to dialogue with GMB to discuss the issues raised and work towards resolving them. And that article was by Craig Payton. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 28th of July 2023, from the news section, exclusive. Police Scotland sued over outdated antidepressant rule. Article by Caroline Wilson. A woman is suing Scotland's police force after a dream job offer was withdrawn because she was taking antidepressants. Laura Mackenzie was described as an impressive candidate whose application to become a probationary police officer stood out. She was shocked that Police Scotland had such a stigmatising attitude towards mental health. The recruitment inspector was also said to be apologetic for the decision to rescind her offer of employment. Weeks after the decision, Police Scotland launched a partnership with the CME programme, which campaigns to end mental health discrimination. According to Employment Tribunal papers, an occupational health nurse said the policy was old and may be due to be revised. Ms Mackenzie applies to become a police officer in the Highlands and Islands Division on June the 15th, 2019, describing the job as her dream career. She said she had carried out research every night after the end of her working day to find out about the role and the core values of Police Scotland. Her firm recounted an incident from her school years when she had witnessed patience and empathy from police officers. She said she had regarded them as role models and that she wished to emulate. Following her application, she was invited to attend an IQ test in Aberdeen. She obtained practice books to improve her numeracy skills. She was issued with a provisional offer of employment by Recruitment Inspector Gavin Davison as a probationary police officer on November the 7th, subject to 6 conditions. One of them stipulated that she must be certified by a registered medical practitioner approved by the police authority to be fit both physically and mentally to perform the duties of a police officer. The letter noted that a failure to meet all or any of the conditions may result in her start date being deferred or the provisional offer being withdrawn. Prior to writing the letter, Inspector Davison called Ms Mackenzie to congratulate her. He said her application by that time had stood out and he was very impressed. On or about December 6, 2019, she attended a medical and it was intended that she would then be fitted for a uniform. The medical was carried out by an occupational health nurse, and one of the first questions she asked was related to antidepressants. Ms Mackenzie said that she had believed that by this time, Police Scotland, or its occupational health advisors, would have had access to her medical records. She said that she was at that time taking an antidepressant drug for anxiety and depression. The nurse telephoned a colleague and then advised her of the 2-year rule, which stipulates that probationary police officers had to be free of antidepressant drugs for a period of 2 years before they could be considered for appointment. Ms Mackenzie said she was heartbroken by this, as she believed she had been transparent with Police Scotland about her health. Inspector Davidson called her and was said to be shocked and apologetic about the decision. She considered stopping her medication for 2 years and reapplying. Optima Health, which provides occupational health services for Police Scotland, said it was prudent that a 2-year period of good mental health with no treatment is required to demonstrate a period of ongoing stability prior to starting what is recognised to be a psychologically and emotionally challenging job. In August 2020, Ms Mackenzie started working as a nursing assistant with NHS Highland in a psychiatric hospital. She began to think again about her rejection and felt she had been wrongly done by. She was advised by the Citizens Advice Scotland to pursue an employment tribunal case against Police Scotland on the grounds of disability discrimination. Police Scotland disputes the claim that Ms Mackenzie is disabled and also argued that the claim was presented out of time, but this was rejected. Lee Nifton, Director of Mental Health Foundation in Scotland, said, "We can't comment on individual cases, but we know that people living with mental health conditions are still facing discrimination and stigma in workplaces, communities and interpersonal relationships. We need employers to show leadership and ensure that the recruitment and workplace practices do not negatively affect people living with mental health conditions. A Police Scotland spokeswoman said, "It would be inappropriate for us to comment at this stage. A preliminary hearing will take place at a later date." And that article was an exclusive by Caroline Wilson. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 28th of July 2023, from the news section, police seize £500,000 worth of cannabis from transit van on M74, by Gabriel Mackay. A man has been arrested and charged after police seize £500,000 worth of cannabis from a transit van near Lesmahago. Following a tip-off, officers from Lanarkshire Road Policing stopped the van on the M74 around 5:45 p.m. on Thursday, 28th of July 2023. Following a search of the vehicle, 90 kilograms of herbal cannabis with an estimated street value of £500,000 was recovered. A 34-year-old man has been arrested and charged in connection with the incident and is due to appear at Airdrie Sheriff Court on Friday, 28th of July 2023. Detective Superintendent Craig Willison of the Organised Crime Unit said, "This is a significant recovery, and I would like to take the opportunity to commend the excellent work of our road policing colleagues who carried out the stop and allowed us to carry out our inquiries. This operation underlines our commitment to the Serious Organised Crime Task Force and the country's Serious Organised Crime Strategy. Police Scotland is committed to using every tool and tactic at our disposal to prevent the sale and distribution of illegal drugs in our local communities. If you have any information or concerns about drug misuse, do not hesitate to contact Police Scotland on 101 or report us anonymously via Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. A report has been sent to the Procurator Fiscal, and that report was by Gabriel Mackay. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 28th of July 2023, from the news section, Scottish football fans given warning ahead of UCI World Championships. Report by Gabriel Mackay. Football fans have been warned to plan ahead for the opening 2 weeks of the SPFL and SWPL seasons, with the UCI Cycling World Championships coming to Glasgow. The event brings together various disciplines of cycling into one event for the first time and will take place in the city and beyond from August the 3rd. Hundreds of thousands of spectators are expected to attend, and with the SPFL season kicking off on August the 5th, public transport is expected to be busier than usual. On August the 5th, Premiership champions Celtic kick off their title defence at home to Ross County, while Rangers host Livingston the following weekend. On Sunday, August the 6th, Hibs host St Mirren at Easter Road, with the men's road race beginning in the capital and finishing in Glasgow. Partick Thistle v Raith Rovers on the 5th of August, and Queen's Park v Arbroath on the 12th of August are also games in the Cinch Championship that could be impacted. The Scottish Power Women's Premier League also kicks off on the 13th of August, the final day of the cycling event, and champions Glasgow City host Hibernian on that day. Callum Beattie, the SPFL's Chief Operating Officer, said, "I am sure football fans across the country are very much looking forward to cheering on their team when the new league season kicks off on August the 5th. Public transport will be particularly busy in Glasgow city centre on our two opening weekends because of the 2023 UCI Cycling World Championships, and we'd simply encourage anyone attending an SPFL or SWPL match to allow extra time for travel so that they can make their game in plenty of time." Valerie Davison, SPT's chief executive, said, "With football and the UCI Cycling World Championships occurring at the same time, the public transport network will be very busy. We want everyone, staff and customers, to remain safe and get to their destination on time. That does mean planning ahead, and I am sure those travelling to games will factor in the additional time needed." British Transport Police Chief Superintendent in Scotland, Gillian Murray, said, "During this period, fans attending any of the Scottish Professional Football League games will notice a lot more police officers on trains and at stations. This is because we expect tens of thousands more rail passengers due to the UCI Cycling World Championships. We will have specially trained uniform and plainclothes officers positioned strategically to make sure football fans and cycling fans alike move safely and efficiently across the rail network." And that was an article by Gabriel Mackay. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 28th of July 2023, from the Politics section, Editor's Pick. We have a responsibility to shape the future of Glasgow. By Catherine Salmond, editor of the Herald Scotland. Glasgow, a city that needs no explanation to those who feel its excitement, history and promise run them. I fell in love with it as a student, and there has been no turning back in this great place that has shaped my life. There is nowhere like Glasgow, and nobody like Glaswegians. This week, there was a lot of talk about the city in our office as the closure of the hugely popular Chardon D'Or restaurant on West Regent Street led to an emotional piece from writer Alison Rowett, which topped out our digital charts for days. Our poor dear once beautiful city is in a bad way, wrote Rowett, and it is going to get worse if something is not done. Readers heard her cry as she declared the state of Glasgow a national emergency, using the closure of the Chardon D'Or as an example of decline, and the need for action. The closure of one restaurant, much loved as it was, might not seem to amount to much in the greater sweep of things, but it does, she wrote. Like any city, Glasgow is an ecosystem. It needs careful monitoring to see what's going right and wrong. The litter and the empty shops should have been enough on their own to ring alarm bells, but apparently not. So what is to be done about Glasgow? How does it recover fully from the pandemic? The challenges of hybrid working? How does it reinvent itself in 2023? How does it solve the problem of its empty shops and struggling businesses? Rowett's piece is just one we have covered this week on the topic, and there are many more to come as we examine the issues facing Glasgow, but also look for solutions to its problems. On Wednesday, our Deputy Business Editor, Scott Wright, echoed Rowett's views that there is more to this story than the failure of this single restaurant, painful though it is for everyone involved. Recognising all the problems facing Glasgow, and the severity of them, he called on the powers that be to seize the initiative with a grand vision that we can all get behind. We are all surely desperate for this. Our loyal readers have their views on the subject too, many getting in touch in response to our coverage. I wish to commend Rowett on her detailed, intelligent, angry and total summation of the state of our dear green place. This is writing of the highest standard, wrote Walter Paul from the city. What I loved about this letter was not only the passion for Glasgow, noting its friendly people in particular, but recognising the collective responsibility all Glaswegians have for their city. I know it is easy to blame those in charge, in this case the SNP-led Glasgow City Council, for the demise of a once wonderful city, Paul wrote. But we must also remember it is us who live and work in and use a city's amenities. It is us, or at least some of us, who throw litter wherever and whenever. It is us who damage walls, windows, buildings, statues with paint, crayons, hammers, whatever. We all do indeed have a responsibility to shape the future of Glasgow. The Herald recognises its role in that. This is not a topic we will be letting go. Catherine Salmond, Editor. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 31st of July 2023, from the news section, motorcyclist dies after collision with car on A96. Report by Sarah Campbell. A motorcyclist has been killed in a collision with a car, with police officers appealing for witnesses to the incident to come forward. Police Scotland has confirmed a 34-year-old man who had been riding a black Yamaha Chaser 9 motorcycle was pronounced dead at the scene following Sunday's incident. The collision, which also involved a white Hyundai i10 car, took place at about 8:40 am on the A96 road near to Alvis Wood in Moray. The female driver of the car suffered minor injuries in the incident, the police said, with the road being closed till 7:40 pm on Sunday to allow for investigations to take place. Sergeant Alexander Bowser-Riley of Police Scotland said, "Our thoughts are with the family of the motorcyclist at this very sad time. I would urge anyone who saw either vehicle shortly prior to the collision, particularly on the A96 between Elgin and Forres, who witnessed the collision or who may have dashcam footage, to contact us." And that story was by Sarah Campbell. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 31st of July 2023, from the news section, Rishi Sunak confirms new oil and gas licences for North Sea, by Sarah Campbell. The Prime Minister has confirmed hundreds of new oil and gas licences will be granted in the UK. In a statement, Rishi Sunak said, "We have all witnessed how Putin has manipulated and weaponised energy, disrupting supply and stalling growth in countries around the world. Now, more than ever, it's vital that we bolster our energy security and capitalise on that independence to deliver more affordable, cleaner energy to British homes and businesses. Even when we've reached net zero in 2050, a quarter of our energy needs will come from oil and gas. But there are those who would rather that it come from hostile states than from the supplies we have here at home. We are choosing to power up Britain from Britain and invest in crucial industries such as carbon capture and storage, rather than depend on more carbon-intensive gas imports from overseas, which will support thousands of skilled jobs, unlock further opportunities for green technologies and grow the economy. The commitment for new oil and gas licences will drive forward our energy independence and our economy for generations," Energy Security Secretary Grant Shapps has said. Mr Shapps said in a statement, "In the wake of Putin's barbaric invasion of Ukraine, our Energy Secretary is more important than ever. The North Sea is at the heart of our plan to power up Britain from Britain, so that tyrants like Putin can never again use energy as a weapon to blackmail us." Today's commitment to power ahead with new oil and gas licences will drive forward our energy independence and our economy for generations. Protecting critical jobs in every region of the UK, safeguarding energy bills for British families, and providing a homegrown fuel for our economy that, for domestic gas production, has around 1/4 of the carbon footprint of imported liquefied natural gas. Our next steps to develop carbon capture and storage in Scotland and the Humber will also help to build a thriving new industry for our North Sea that could support as many as 50,000 jobs as we deliver on our priority of growing the economy. And that report was by Sarah Campbell. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 31st of July 2023, from the news section, "Using AI against shoplifters isn't the right approach." Article by Daniela Theus. That events in the UK are likened to an episode of the dystopian TV show Black Mirror, a Netflix series which does not shy away from exploring the dark side of technology and modern society, is something I have caught myself thinking a few times. I have wondered what it is that makes me liken real-world events to fiction. Perhaps it is that these things are so bizarre I wish it all would be fiction rather than real-world events. My most recent thoughts were spurred by an article in The Observer, which detailed a covert government strategy to install electronic surveillance in shops in the form of the Home Office backing AI technology using facial recognition to curb shoplifting. The newspaper was able to see the minutes of meetings between the Policing Minister Chris Philip, senior Home Office officials, and Simon Gordon, the founder of FaceWatch, a company which says it is the UK's leading facial recognition retail security company. The minutes seem to show Home Office officials agreeing to write to the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO, advocating the merits of facial recognition technology in tackling retail crime. Maybe it is the timing provoking such strong reactions in me. The report comes weeks after some retail giants have reported millions and billions of pounds in profit, so much so that the word greedflation has become everyday vocabulary, while the rest of the country is relatively worse off and many are struggling to make ends meet. Then I wonder as to whether such intensive crackdowns, which bring with them questions when it comes to privacy and human rights, are really the answer to this complex problem. The plans come as a response to the rising reports of shoplifting. The British Retail Consortium, BRC, says they have more than doubled in British shops since 2016-17. Retailers have spoken up about acts of violence they face, people smashing in windows, climbing behind hills, organised crime rings developing tactics to maximise their haul. Retailer Co-op stated last week that, due to the increase of such events, some areas may even become a no-go zone for their shops. While such events are worrying and should not be ignored, it is questionable whether it is these problems the new software is trying to address, because most shoplifting incidents happen under the radar, which is why such technology is even considered. Extreme cases of violent crime and repeat offending should not be dismissed, but neither should the reason behind the rising numbers and changing nature of shoplifting and those who shoplift, and whether such technologies are the answer to this growing and changing problem. Data by the Association of Convenience Stores found that while 53% of those caught stealing were repeat offenders, 47% were doing it for the first time. The why is more complicated. Due to the fact that only a fraction of cases end up in investigation or charges, often linked to a lack of resources for police to investigate the growing number of cases, it has been said by the BRC that it is hard to see why more and more people resort to stealing. Anecdotally, due to the timing and obvious challenges, the incidents are often linked to the rising cost of living, something only reinforced when looking at what items are being stolen the most. In 2021, FaceWatch said the most commonly stolen items are packed meat, nappies, razor blades, whiskey, cosmetics, cheese, deodorants and small electrical goods. More recently, such items were trumped by reports of baby food and medicine being top items going missing. In one London borough, one of the most stolen items was recently said to be Calpol. According to the Office for National Statistics, ONS, nearly all that reported a rise in their cost of living cited the price of food shopping as a reason, followed by gas and electricity bills, the price of fuel, and rent and mortgage costs. The ONS also found that between February and May, 1 in 20 adults said they had run out of food in the past 2 weeks and had been unable to afford more. Not all of these people will resort to stealing. For those that do, the fact also remains that theft is a crime. Even though some of those potentially considering to implement these technologies may still be making ludicrous profits, while others are struggling to make ends meet, I don't want to glorify stealing as a form of purposeful rebellion in this messed up chain of events. What I do want to say is that I can't help but feel that the actions taken by people that do resort to petty theft for everyday items come from a place of need rather than greed. And that is probably why I can't help but feel the Black Mirror effect when it comes to the government's response to curb shoplifting. This case, once again, seems to show an extreme eagerness to support reactionary measures that punish those that ought to receive more support instead of tackling the root cause of the problem. Because, when it comes to the latter, there seems to be a lot of hesitance from government politicians. When public sector workers were striking for better, fairer pay, they were initially told that there isn't much more money in the pot and that trying to get paid enough to make a living was driving inflation. Taxing those UK millionaires and billionaires a wealth tax is something that was continuously shouted about before and during this time. Yet, despite analysis such as that by Oxfam, which found that the richest 1% of Britons hold more wealth than 70% of Britons, the current Prime Minister is continuously opposed to such levies. For years, campaigners have called for changes to the social security system that have been left unanswered, a reform to the universal credit system being one of them. Instead, according to the Trussell Trust in 2022, Over half of universal credit claimants face food poverty. When it comes to employment, one of the most recent such calls came from the Institute for Employment Studies, IES, last week. The body, among other things, urged for change to current procedures to help people into work. Instead of extreme motoring and sanctions, the report states that sanction rates have doubled since 2019. The body says to emphasise empowerment and to enable people, rather than threatening them, and on finding the right job rather than any job. Such calls have been nothing new, but they do not sit well with those that believe in punitive measures. Overall, we see strong opposition when it comes to increasing wages, better social security systems, and fairer tax systems. Yet, government representatives seem to go all giddy for punitive tactics. So, our life may not be a Black Mirror episode, although I wish I could hit pause on some of this, but that these events seem dystopian and something I could wish be fiction is undeniable. Article by Daniela Theus.
From the Herald, Monday, 31st of July, 2023. Sports section. Kevin Clancy's pub league bungle strengthens stop clock case. By Graham McGarry, senior sports writer. Many moons ago, some unfortunate scheduling led to a large swathe of our Sunday football team having to turn up for a match straight off the bus home after a stag do in Edinburgh. It went exactly as you would expect. With goals raining into our net and most of the boys sweating profusely despite having barely moved, the ref asked if we might want to call the game early and head for a wee hair of the dog. An offer of mercy that was gleefully accepted, and the same way a round of aftershocks was just a few hours previously. Even for the Carluke and District Amateur League, it was bordering on unacceptable behaviour, but a ref would never call time early in a professional game, right? Well, as it turns out, wrong. Kevin Clancy's decision to blow for time a matter of seconds after the final whistle of Motherwell's League Cup win over East Fife on Saturday had Fir Park gaffer Stuart Kettlewell tearing his immaculately sculpted Barnet out. As the clock ticked past the 90th minute, the 3-0 winning margin, Motherwell had looked as if it wouldn't be enough to earn seeded status in the last 16 of the League Cup. With Kettlewell urging his men to go for the jugular against the towering 10 men of the League Two outfit. Clancy, though, had already seen enough, evidently not factoring in the significance of the situation, and decided to disregard the 10 substitutions and the lengthy delay for proceedings as Motherwell striker Connor Wilkinson had a nasty cut above his eye, attended to, and he blew for time. Luckily for the Steelmen, the official in charge of Ross County's clash with Kilty Hearts, Stephen McLean, did in fact play stoppage time, during which time the Staggies conceded a penalty and were pegged back to 3-3. They subsequently lost the shootout for the bonus point and their place as a seeded team to Motherwell along with it. It may seem in the face of it that a ref not following protocol and showing a bit of mercy to a team at the end of a low-key League Cup group game isn't the biggest of issues when it comes to the standard of officiating in Scottish football. But it speaks to an amateurish approach to refereeing our game even at the top level. Kettlewell said that Clancy had shown a lack of respect to the competition, and it's hard to argue. And what is worrying is that in a Premiership season that looks to have the potential to go to the wire in the various battles throughout the table, that's a referee's discretion in terms of how much time to add on to a match where one team may be losing heavily. It could decide a club's fate. Imagine if the title race for the battle for third, the top 6 of the relegation places came down to goal difference. A winning team by 4 instead of potentially 5, or a team losing by a goal less than they may have had the proper time been added to a game, could feasibly have a massive knock-on effect. Nobody wants to see games going on for hours on end, but an easy way to remove any notion of skullduggery or even simple inconsistency would be to remove the referee as the sole arbiter of how much time is actually added at the end of the contest. Former FA Vice-Chairman David Dane is a vocal backer of introducing a stop clock to matches, with time paused whenever the ball goes out of play, The debate was raised in January when Newcastle United were accused of time-wasting their way to a win over Arsenal in a game where the ball was in play for just 51 minutes, 4 minutes less than the average EPL game. The ball being in play for such a short space of time in that match caused a major stooshy south of the border, but remarkably, it was still in play more than the average match in the Scottish Premiership at that point. 50 minutes and 42 seconds is the typical time the ball is live up here, the lowest ratio of the 8 top-ranked leagues in Europe. So by employing a stop clock, the amount of football the paying fans would see would increase significantly. There may be an argument that this is not necessarily a good thing in some cases, and it would remove the burden of keeping track from the shoulders of the referee. As it stands, the process by which any referee adds time is far from transparent and prone to inconsistency from official to official. There are guidelines for how much to add for substitutions, VAR delays, and so on, of course. But how strictly these are followed by one referee or another clearly varies. We are constantly being told that technology has been brought into the game in the form of VAR in order to aid our officials. Clancy's error puts weight behind the notion that perhaps the time has come to extend that thinking to the match clock. Despite the sneers of its critic, the Scottish Premier is not a pub league. It shouldn't be subject to cultural hangovers from the past, such as referees blowing early. That article was by Graham McGarry.
The Herald on the 1st of August and the news section. Edinburgh Zoo welcomes critically endangered Vizian warty piglets by Sarah Campbell. A litter of critically endangered species of pig has been born at Edinburgh Zoo. The Royal Zoological Society of Scotland announced the birth of 4 Vizian warty piglets on Tuesday. Keepers say the piglets, born to parents Nikki and Elvis 6 weeks ago, are all doing well and will be named soon. The species is native to all Vizian Islands in the Philippines, but can now only be found on the islands of Panay and Negros, having become extinct on the other 4. The animals are listed as critically endangered by the International Union of Conservation for Nature, as there is believed to be as few as 200 of them left in the wild. Johnny Appleyard, Hoofstock team leader at Edinburgh Zoo, said, "We are so excited to welcome Nicky and Elvis's piglets. Our Vizian warty pigs are full of character, and our 4 new arrivals are no exception. Once they receive their first health check in the coming weeks, we will know if they are boys or girls." Agricultural expansion and logging have devastated vast amounts of their habitat, and they are also hunted for their meat, making them one of the rarest wild pigs in the world. We are excited to welcome 4 piglets, who will add as incredible ambassadors for this species in the wild, inspiring more people to protect, value, and love nature. At just 6 weeks old, the piglets are still dependent on their mother and are spending a lot of time indoors at the zoo at the moment. But visitors will be able to spot Nicky and our piglets exploring their home more and more over the next few weeks. And that was by Sarah Campbell. The Herald on the 1st of August and the news section. Royal Mail and Skyports launch Orkney drone delivery service by Sarah Campbell. The UK's first drone delivery service, which can be conducted on a permanent basis, has been launched at Orkney to provide locals with their mail. Royal Mail and Skyport's drone services have launched the Orkney iPort operation to distribute letters and parcels between the islands, in partnership with the Orkney Council Harbour Authority and Logan Air. Mail will be transported from the Royal Mail's Kirkwall delivery service to Stromness, where the drone deliveries will transport items to staff on Grahamsay and Hoy to allow postal workers to carry out their usual island delivery routes. While the service will initially operate for 3 months, it could be continued on a permanent basis under existing regulatory frameworks due to Orkney's unique landscape and the proximity of the islands to one another. The drone service is expected to significantly improve service levels and delivery times to Grahamsay and Hoy, as weather and geography can cause disruption to delivery services. The use of electric drones for inter-island delivery will also bring significant safety improvements by ensuring postal workers can deliver between ports without risk. The project has been funded by the Department for Transport's Freight Innovation Fund and carried out by the Connected Places Catapult. Chris Paxton, head of the drone trials at Royal Mail, said, "We are proud to be working with Skyports to deliver via drone to some of the most remote communities that we serve in the UK. Using a fully electric drone supports Royal Mail's continued drive to reduce emissions associated with our operations, while connecting the island communities we deliver to." Alex Brown, director of Skyport's drone services, said, "By leveraging drone technology, we are revolutionising mail services in remote communities, providing more efficient and timely delivery and helping to reduce the requirement for emissions-producing vehicles. We're pleased to be once again partnering with the Royal Mail to demonstrate how drone operations can benefit UK logistics on this project." And that was by Sarah Campbell. The Herald on the 1st of August and the news section. Glasgow, Willow video interview platform cracks Fortune 500 by Brian Donnelly. A Glasgow-founded firm that is claimed to be one of the world's fastest-growing recruitment technology scale-ups said it's set for a new direction after enabling £1.1 billion in salaries through hires this year. Willow said it's set to move in a new direction following a major upgrade to its video interview technology, currently used by more than 5,000 organisations around the world. The asynchronous video interview platform is currently used by thousands of organisations, including Very and the NHS, in more than 140 countries, and is now fully integrated with 11 of the world's biggest HR platforms, including Ashby, Workday, SAP SuccessFactors, and Smart Recruiters. It said the move unlocks the door to the vast majority of Fortune 500 companies, the platform's technology now available to companies accounting for more than 250 million employees worldwide. Growth at the scale-up, which received £1.5 million in investment during its latest funding round, has risen in 2023, with almost 50,000 people hired through the platform, up 73% year-on-year, and an estimated £1.1 billion in salaries enabled. Ewan Cameron, Willow's co-founder and chief executive, estimates turnover at the tech firm will top $50 million within the next 2.5 years, with the latest upgrade and expansion in North America the gateway to achieving the target. "This is one of the biggest developments at Wilco since launch," he said. "It enables existing and future large customers to benefit from Wilco's interviewing technology within their existing HR and recruitment ecosystem, making the process even more seamless and opening the door to potentially millions more users. It also signals a significant shift in direction for Willow as a company as we seek to meet the needs of some of the world's largest organisations. We are already working with HelloFresh, Prada, the NHS, Hotjar and others, and we fully expect to see more Fortune 500 businesses taking up the technology. It is difficult to forecast the true impact on growth of these new integrations, but it puts us firmly on a path to becoming the world's premier provider of video interview software, and that possibly has never been more real." Willow's new plug-and-play integrations means users can enable integrations without developer support or any technical knowledge, it said. Other benefits recently introduced include automated ID and right-to-work checks to streamline the hiring process and make the hiring experience at scale more frictionless for customers and candidates. Last month, Willow also unveiled the appointment of tech deals expert Kevin Swan as Vice President of Finance, in a move signalling a shift towards more data-led insights and intelligence. Award-winning Mr. Swan previously headed up professional services giant EY's tech deals division in Scotland. Willow has also moved into the top 10 video interview software platforms, according to global software marketplace G2. And that was by Brian Donnelly.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review. Tell your friends about our service.